All right, I'll start.
Okay.
Uh, I'd like to know your opinion about artificial intelligence in art, making art, like composing music, painting. Do you think it's AI can be creative and can come up with new things? And also, can AI be subjective like humans, like critics? One has an opinion, one has a completely different opinion. And where will that lead?
Um, I think that's a very big subject, but the question really is like, what does art do? What does art do to people? That is the question we have to ask ourselves first, right? That's what I think. So if, and I see it just like in my case, I have to say like that maybe the purpose of what I do with my art, with my music, is to inspire people. And so the question would be like, is it possible that artificial art or artificial intelligence creating art will actually create art that inspires people? I would say definitely, yes, definitely. So there doesn't even have to be a human involved. But this is wrong because obviously the artificial intelligence is never going to be artificial. It's always going to be human because the human has to generate the artificial intelligence. So that is kind of like my perspective there, that artificial intelligence in the sense that we can imagine does not really exist unless we see it as coming, as something that's coming from the outside, that is not has not been created by us. But as long as it's created by us, I think I wouldn't even use the word artificial intelligence. It's
I see.
That's just my perspective.
So art doesn't have to be creative, but if it inspires,
Yes,
basically,
yes,
it doesn't
exactly.
matter. It's made by machines or by humans. If it inspires, it can be something, just something that was done in the past by somebody else, but it's rephrased or presented in a different light. Or
Yeah, I mean,
okay,
you can ask the same question about different styles of music or like pop music versus serious music or whatever. I think it's about like what inspires. So if there's somebody who like only knows a certain very thin slice of the music that's out there and is still inspired by that, then that's great and that's fine. And then the music and the art serves its purpose, um, you know. And yeah,
cool, thanks.
yeah. But I have many more thoughts about artificial intelligence, but
I have many
really,
more questions.
but your question basically asked you were asking for the ultimate answer, and I tried tried to give that. So
Yeah,
For
I
me
know.
too.
I don't think there's an ultimate answer, yeah,
yeah,
it's not black or white.
no, just my ultimate answer.
Well, in this discussion, it always comes up that whether the listener or the perceiver of the art knows the source of the art and what degree that colors the perception. If the person is sitting there and being inspired, what difference does it make where it comes from?
I agree,
Or
Neil.
maybe they're being artificially inspired. It could be either way.
I totally agree, Neil. That's what I would say. And I mean, I have, I don't know, maybe I don't think there's anybody out there who's known me for 20 years or so, maybe. But in around 2001, we had the Centurzone or Centrozone album called The Cult of Bibiboo. And back then we were extremely creative with the marketing, and we had like several interesting things. And one idea that I came up with it was that I wanted us to have an oracle online, like a virtual person that you could ask a question. But I didn't want it to be just like a regular chatbot, something that even like 40 years ago was was something that programmers were programming and doing. But the idea was that it's something where it's like an empty database, and I think it's called Markov chains nowadays, like where you kind of like the computer tries to kind of sort things depending on how they were put into the computer, and it was a really crude system, but it worked, and it was so much fun to interact with it. It was called the Oracle of Bibiboo. It actually had its own website, and it was up for maybe, like, I can't remember now, 2 to 5 years. And at the end, it had like tens of thousands of entries, which entries were full sentences that people typed into the machine, and they were there was like a neural network behind it, like all the connections between these statements, and it was incredibly inspiring. Like whenever Bernhard and I, who we've been working together since '96 as Central Zone, and so whenever we had like a business decision to make, we even asked Bibiboo, like, for example, do we want a green or a red sofa in our office? And seriously, we just went online and asked Bibiboo, and she or it or whatever usually kind of just came up with some strange sentence that somebody has written into it, and it was always inspiring. So I don't even see the need when it comes to like artificial or intelligence and art for something to be perfect or something to even trying to mimic what humans do. I think it's more inspiring if there's something that is a little awkward or alien or wrong, or we know that that's where usually inspiration comes from, right?
Can we bring it back? Is there any way to bring the Oracle back from the archives?
I think it's kind of impossible. But if there's a programmer out there who would like to reprogram it, that would be possible. It's just very simple. I still have all the details in my head, and I think, like, for somebody who's very good nowadays with all the tools that are available, would probably just, like, I don't know, a couple of days of work.
I think the world could use it right now.
Yes, yeah, it was
Maybe,
really.
maybe you can post that on the board, like, and ask people. Maybe will be somebody who is willing to do that.
Yeah, actually, there's my friend Hacksaw, who lives in Boston, in the US, and he has actually written the software that I use for my compositions. It's called Play Notes, and it's a software that I kind of designed or came up with the idea when I was 15. And about 5 years ago, I met Hacksaw and asked him if he could program it for me, and he did. And then I wrote my string quartet Heartland with that software. And I will ask him. Yeah, I will ask him if he can help with the Oracle.
I guess while we're on the topic of technology, given the huge changes in music technology, and we'll just limit it to the past 20 years even.
Mm-hmm.
What is the music technology that you are most excited about, and what is the technology you are least excited about?
Very, very good question. So most excited I'm about software like Isotope RX, which is kind of like a spectral editor, which also, I guess, is using some sort of machine learning for some of its processes. I can't remember when it was released, probably 10 years ago or so, and I've used it ever since, every single day. I promise, every single day I've used RX. It's a software that you can use for audio restoration, so you can do declicking, denoising, you can remove a cough from a recording, like the Todmorden 513 live recording, for example. I removed quite a few coughs on that one. Like, if anybody's wondering why there are so few coughs in there. Yeah, I'm very excited about like anything that kind of like seems sort of impossible to do. Like, well, you would ask yourself, how could you ever distinguish, in a data set, the pattern of a cough versus the pattern of like the snare hit or something. But it turns out it is possible, and like with the Fourier transformation, it's kind of, I'm not a mathematician, so I don't really know how it works, but I know that it is possible. And companies like Isotope, I really, really like because of that. Also, there's like a new wave of audio plugins that does sort of a lot of automatic EQing and automatic compression. I'm also very much enjoying these tools. Like even though I hardly ever use the settings that the intelligent part comes up with, but again, it's inspiring. It's really inspiring, and to see that, like now with a push of a button, it's possible to just make something sound a little better. Not saying that it sounds better as if a human being would do it, but like especially if you're looking for a quick solution, like I'm sometimes like I'm putting up these Stickman bootlegs, and I know I'm going to make $100 on a release, and so I cannot spend more than an hour working on it, which already is too much. So in such a case, I would use an automated process, and yeah, so that's the side that I enjoy very much. And on the other hand, there is a lot of, I don't know which word I want to use here, a lot of shit really out there. And starting in with the idea of converting, because I'm a guitarist, right? Okay, like converting the guitar string like to a MIDI signal, something like that. That has been like one of the most disappointing experiences of my life. Just dreaming how cool it would be to do that, and then turns out it doesn't. I mean, it works somehow. It doesn't work on my instrument at all. But then seeing that actually it removes me completely from, or like the sound that comes out is completely removed from what I do with the instrument. So anyway, that was like that's old technology that I didn't enjoy. And I guess like the other aspect of like the musical instrument industry that I think is horrible is that there's so many instruments being put on the market that are rather than being inspiring, they, because of like, let's say, lack of usability, or lack of some sort of mental ergonomics, if that makes any sense, or even ergonomics, they don't make any sense. Like there's been an instrument, and I'm being so frank to just mention its name, called Eigenharp, for example, which I don't understand why anybody would want to use something like that. But this is just like obviously from my perspective, but it's, I don't know. I mean, like you look it up if you're. There's been quite a few instruments of that kind, or like once people have discovered Kickstarter, and they know they can just create any sort of strange gimmicky musical instrument and make like $500,000 by putting it on Kickstarter, and then they produce this toy instrument that really nobody will ever really use. And I think there are always like two sides to this. I have a friend, Michael Peters, who is a very huge influence on me, a German guitarist and composer, and a very, very good friend. And he has a collection of these strange instruments, actually, and he uses them to make music. And like, so I shouldn't be that condescending towards such inventions, but. Yeah, so Chris, that was my long answer there.
Like a syntax that Alan Holdsworth, like it only worked for him and maybe for a couple of other guys,
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is that there are always people who can turn anything into something great if you find the inspiration to work with it, right?
Yeah.
And I remember that even like also in the times right after the Cult of Bibi, that album that I recommend, by the way, which is it's a milestone in my catalog. Right after that, we started recording a new album called Angel Liquor, and Bernhard, my partner in Central Zone, we actually had some money, and we bought a Zetar, which Starlab Zetar, I can't remember the name of the model, but it was rather small. It was just like a neck with a little bit of body, and it was just buttons, plastic buttons on a plastic neck, and it was kind of really wacky, and it didn't really work. But we recorded quite a few albums with that, and it's been inspirational. Like Bernhard, he enjoys. He is such a he approaches music making just like a sculptor, you could say. So he uses his hands, and he needs to be able to grab the sound and massage it somehow. And he doesn't care so much about which pitches come out. So with the Zetar, it was interesting because he could just put random tunings on that instrument and just kind of like randomly push buttons. And as you'll hear listening to those albums, it's quite amazing stuff that nobody else would ever have played with, on a different instrument, I guess. So, yeah. So,
guitar to MIDI has always been extremely difficult. Well, say any stringed instrument convert to MIDI because of all the crazy idiosyncratic things, even just between how a player approaches, creating a note.
Yeah, but there's been a few years ago, I can't remember now, like just before Prog Noir, there was this new pedal like by Boss called SY300, which is a guitar synth that doesn't take MIDI, but it just takes a line signal and tries to convert it to a synthesizer sound. And even though it's also kind of wacky, but it works much better. It feels more like you're playing an analog synth somehow, where an analog synth is also some sort of like you're triggering a circuit that then creates a sound, and it feels more like that, and it actually works. And I've used it quite a bit on tour with Stickman, and also actually on the album Prog Noir. I didn't use it as a sound source as such, but I sent submixes of the whole band through that thing because it creates interesting glitches. And so it's kind of like some sort of interesting glitch machine that I've used on quite a few productions since.
I'm guessing that's because the processors just get faster, computer processors, and they can just process that signal in real time.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm pretty sure we're nowhere near the end of that. What can be done really. It's just like more about the imagination of the people that come up with these instruments. I remember like my first multi-effects floorboard that I had was a Boss GT5, which must have been in '95, I think.
I have one here now.
Yeah, I have two. And it's a beautiful machine that has a great sound, and like you can hear it on a lot of my releases. And actually just a couple years I recorded 3 albums with that. They are called, it's the Monde albums. That's their trilogy I put out for my VIPs. And but that, the thing was like once that was released, like I started dreaming, like what would be the ideal processor like this? Like which connections would I like to make, and like which kind of purposes should it fulfill? And then Chris knows what I'm talking about, the Helix. Which came how many years later? 25 or 20 years later. Finally, that was like the first device that had all the things that I had dreamed about in 94, 95 already. And I still use it because I like it a lot. So it really requires not just an inventor's mind, but also a musical mind to come up with good solutions to the problems for musicians. And I mean, there's still guitar effects boxes out there that don't have a headphone output. I wonder how something like that can happen, right?
Sounds like what you're doing with the synth is something similar to what Brian Eno was doing with Roxy Music in a live setting. And also, I believe, Martin Swope of Mission of Burma, who was basically using a tape loop system while Mission of Burma was playing live, and he would actually process it in real time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's that's really a revolutionary approach. The idea of live treatments. You know, like it adds like a certain chaotic element. But if you set up like even like in the 70s, you could set up a mixing board with, you know, you would have all the signals from all the people in the band, and you would have like a couple of effects boxes or just feedback loops within the desk, and you could just play along with the signals that the people generated. And I agree. I mean, I don't know who really started this, but Brian Eno was like, or still is like one of the people who is, or he brought the idea of audio treatments in audio production also into the picture. And I have to say, I love that kind of work so much. Like that's actually why I have a collection of pedals, of real pedals like these, you know, because I like to try them on the kick drum or on the combination of the kick and the snare drum when I'm producing something. And that, like, even if at the end, like, I'm recording this new signal which may be totally destroyed, but then I mix it into the music just at a subliminal level, and it adds something where, like you know, like your subconscious mind does hear it, but you cannot really name it. You cannot really look for it when you listen closely, but it's there, and it changes the feel. And yeah, that's great, and that's what I did with the synthesizer and the Stickman on Prog Noir on that album. Yes.
Is it something that you also are, I like to call it the Centrozone approach. Is that kind of am I on the right track with that?
No, the Centrozone approach is different. The Centrozone approach is just free improv with sounds that basically had not been used for free improv. And also with without the, you know, there are like certain definitions for certain genres, or the same for free improv, like where the idea is you don't ever repeat yourself. And while that is true, but if you use a sequencer as a musical instrument to freely improvise, then the repetition is part of the instrument you use, and then it becomes legitimate, I find. And that's what Bernard and I did. And you know, I come from actually my musical background even before I started practicing a musical instrument. So when I first had my Chapman stick, I was in a band that was called the Chaos Orchestra, so Chaos Orchestra, in Bielefeld, where I studied. And it was like back then the leader of that ensemble was already 65 years old, so he had really gone through all the times of like Cage and then free improvisation in the 60s and like all this, and he had a wealth of knowledge that he passed on to us. While improvising, we didn't have classes together, we were just playing together. It was every Wednesday night, and that was really my real, I would say, introduction to music as an art form and music as expression, or as an expressive tool, let's say. Before I could even, like, you know, play an A on the Chapman stick, I went there and I learned like to detune the strings and hit the strings, hit the non-existent body of the instrument and make all sorts of noises and stuff. And that's really where I come from. So it's interesting how a part of my style has completely gone in different directions since.
Were there any recordings of the Chaos Orchestra?
Yes, I have tapes, and I actually found them recently. And I also have a machine that converts tapes, well, a tape machine with a USB output, so I can try to capture some of those moments and maybe release them at some point.
What was the name of your instructor?
Gerhard Lisken. He must have died about 5 to 10 years ago. I don't know, unfortunately. I never met him again after my time in Bielefeld.
Gerhard Lisken, Liskin?
Ken.
I'm going to look him up to see if I can find
Yes.
some background. Are you
Yes.
familiar with a gentleman by the name of Georg Katzer?
No.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'll look him up.
I just searched for Gerhard Lisken, and he died in 2018.
Okay.
So it says in Bielefeld. Was he from Mers?
It's possible, but he had lived in Bielefeld for a long time. He was a
Yes.
professor at the University for Applied Sciences.
Yes, that must be him.
Yeah. Okay. Any more questions?
Yeah, I have questions. So you said when you were studying in Bielefeld, you had a Checkman stick. Was that your first instrument?
No, it wasn't my first instrument, but in a way it was. I started as a young kid playing, like my parents. They were very good. They really didn't really know much about music or even like education of any sort, and they always sent me to good schools. And they sent me to this music school when I can't even remember, maybe 4 or 5 years old, or 3 even. And I started just banging a glockenspiel, and I just had an A on it, right? Something like that. And then they took me to I learned to play the recorder, which I hated. That was at around age 6, I guess. And then I went on to learn the mandolin, which is interesting because mandolin is tuned in fifths, and I play my instrument that's tuned in fifths. And yeah, but that still didn't grab me so much. And then, and some of you have heard this story, but when I was 10 years old, I went to my uncle, and my mother took me to a Mike Oldfield show, and that's where like the spark got lit to become a musician slash producer. And then I asked my parents to I got interested in keys, wanting to learn to play keyboards, and they bought me like a small Yamaha, I don't know how many keys, like 2 octaves, 2.5 octaves keyboard. And I still remember like doing my first research into music, into harmony music theory on that little thing. I was 10 years old. And then, yeah, I actually went to take some keyboard lessons, and I had just like let's say like an average teacher. And then suddenly I had a music student from Münster in Germany who started teaching me, and he was very, very good. He already showed me like compositional techniques. He asked me to compose. I was 13 or 14 years old, and he was also a fan of Mike Oldfield. He was a fan of King Crimson, of David Torn, of Yes, and he was the one he gave me a tape which had Yes, How Does the Sunrise on one side, and David Torn's Snapping the Hollow Reed on the other side. And that was kind of like introduction to prog. And so even like before I knew of King Crimson, but he had mentioned the name King Crimson. So that I was young. I don't know, 14, 15 maybe. And then on my 15th birthday, I had my first acoustic guitar, slash classical guitar lesson. And so that was the first time where it was like more serious, in the sense that I had actually an interest in it. I had a friend, an Indian friend, and his name was George, and he already played classical guitar. And I still remember actually one of the pieces that some of you might know, I wrote on his guitar in his children's bedroom. It's called 10 Years. It's on a Europa String Choir album. It's on the album Lemon Crash. And I wrote that when I was 14. Before I ever had a guitar lesson, but I wrote that on guitar. And so that was that. And then when I was 18, I went to a guitarcraft course, and so I went there with a steel string guitar. But it never, actually, just yesterday I posted a photo on Facebook of me with a group of people in '93 or something, with that guitar. Oh no, it must have been '92 or something. But yeah, so and then the Chapman stick was the first instrument that I bought myself. I called Trey Gunn, who was in the studio with David Sylvian and Robert Fripp I think they were in Woodstock at that time. I called Trey and asked him, "Do you have a spare instrument?" He said, "Yes, I have a spare instrument. You can have it for $1,000." And as always, my parents, I can't remember if it was my money, but I think it was my parents' money. They were always extremely nice and helped me kind of like fulfill my dreams. And yeah, and so when I got, and this is why I said yes and no, when I received the Chapman stick, and I had dreams about it for months, right? Like how great how great it's gonna be. I put it on my body, and it felt like something from Mars that like only an alien race would be able to really embrace, literally, like physically. It was really alien. And at that point, I realized that I have to make up my mind. I need to make a decision here. Do I really want to do that? If I want to do this, I need to dedicate my life to this. Otherwise, I shouldn't even bother. And that was the beginning of that was the real beginning of my career as a musician. That was in early '93, so I was still 20 years old.
But can you tell us a little bit about Swimming in Tea? I believe that's one of the very first composition you made.
Yes. That was also one of the early compositions. I had a band. Well, actually, in my school, there were like sort of like a class system, yeah, of classes. So I was in the class which had the letter G, and there were other people that were like in A, B, and C, right? And those were like kids, daughters and sons of doctors and lawyers, and like in these, And I was in G, right? So we were only like we had working class parents, and it was sort of like the scum class of the school, unfortunately. Which I'm not saying that the people, like the kids, were scum. It was just that we had the worst teachers. They always gave us the worst teachers. So in terms of socializing with others in the school, it was really hard for me to actually get into contact with the others who actually had a musical education, who had like an electric guitar or even drums or something like that, because that didn't exist in my class. And so I had to wait till I was about, and I don't know, like the school system here is different and was different than in other parts of the world. So I really had to wait till this the structure of these A, B, C, D, G things was unified, which was when I was about 17 or something, for the what's called the Abitur. So the last 2.5 years in school, at college, I guess. I don't know if it's college, high school, I guess it's called. And so I had to wait until then before I could join the school band, which was just a couple guys and a couple girls. I can't remember it really, but and so it was only in my last year in school that I joined this band, and we had a name. The name was Oriental Footlove, and it was great because we played all original compositions. Like everybody in the band had written a piece. The keyboard player, the guitarist, the saxophone player had written a couple pieces, and I was the bass player actually. I had never before played the bass, so I actually just played the bass and played it more like classical guitar like this. And I wasn't very good, but I also wrote 2 pieces for the band, for Oriental Footlove. And one was called Swimming in Tea, and it actually had lyrics, and I still have them somewhere. It was much faster than the version that we now play, but it's still the same. It's still the same rhythmic motif and like tonal motif, same melody, same bass line, and that was like when I was maybe 18, Leonardo. And then I remember that the singer we had, which was a really nice lady, a girl back then, now lady, I've talked with her just a couple of years ago, and I played her a version of Stickman playing Swimming in Tea in South America, and she cried when she heard it. It was unbelievable. She was so moved because she loved it so much back then already, and it was just it's to me it's kind of bizarre, like how far back some of these musical ideas go. It's the same with Falling for Ascension, which is also based on a very old idea. Actually, an idea I had based on an assignment that said a piano teacher gave me, who had also introduced me to Yes and David Torn, and it's kind of fascinating.
That's great.
Yeah,
I love that. I love that tune. You know, it's a bit. It's becoming one of my favorite tunes lately.
yeah. For me,
I've heard that so many times, but it's so great.
yeah. For me, music is very much about sort of like a not so much about a sound world. It's more about like an emotional world that I kind of enjoy, or that I mean, the funny thing is that I have this feeling that it's something that also other people may enjoy, and like when I get that sense, it's not that I do it for other people. I do it for myself in the first place, but it's just interesting how these ideas then have such a long life. Yeah. I mean, I'm 48 now, so it's 30 years, over 30 years that Swimming in Tea was written.
Yeah. Great.
Anybody else? More questions? We still have 20 minutes.
Yeah, I got one.
Yeah, Mark.
Hey Marcus. How you doing? Could you talk a little bit about how you improvise? You know, how you pick the notes.
Yeah. So Mark, this is kind of like based on decades of actually working with musical material, let's say. So I have many different modes that I can go into to improvise. Like when I was in that Chaos Orchestra in Bielefeld, it was purely gestural. So there was no consideration of pitch or anything. Like your question, like how would you choose the notes? Sometimes I choose them just because it's a gesture. It's like I want to do this, and then I just do this on the instrument, and I don't care which notes there are. So it's more about like the translation of the movement of the impulse, of the physical impulse, into something that then comes out of the instrument. And so there are obviously quite a few other modes. Yeah. So for example, even without really wanting to, my ear has gotten very good. So I hear the pitches that the other people play, and I've even gotten to the point now where I don't need to make these pitches conscious anymore. So I don't need to have the voice in my head that tells me, oh, that's an F sharp that somebody played. It's like even that kind of voice is being bypassed nowadays, and I just hear it, and my hands, even without me thinking about it, my hands go there if I want to go there. So if I look for the unison, let's say, my hands just go there. So it's more about, also in that regard, it's very much about just letting the body and sort of the subconscious processes find their way out via my body onto the instrument. And yeah, I mean I mean, I don't know if that's maybe too abstract of an answer, Mark, but that's really how it happened for me. Obviously, I can tell you, I can try to report back to you my 30 years of practicing a musical instrument, and then you will have your full answer.
Well, so I mean, you're saying part of it is ear, developing a good ear, and that's
Yeah,
sensible.
but that's not enough. You also need to establish the connection between the ear and your body and the instrument. So it just doesn't help if you have the ear, but you're not capable of moving your hands in such a way that you can find those notes, and that you can find those notes without playing like 11 wrong notes before you actually hit the one that's right. So it's kind of like about like when you practice a musical instrument for improvisation, one aims you could have is to raise the probability of hitting a note that sounds the way that is inspiring to you. And when I say inspiring to you, it could be a note that kind of like fits in with the existing rules, like everybody plays in C major, right? And then you play a note from C major and nobody cringes. But if you play a note that's not in the scale, then that's something else, And so the idea really there is also the one of acceptance and just allowing any kind of sound to be okay. Yeah. So I know that's also something that maybe sounds a little lofty, but it's actually really the case. If you allow yourself to play anything and smile about it, or play anything and actually enjoy it, then you're 99% there, or maybe even 99.9%.
Well, so do you think playing a touch instrument kind of facilitates that? From the way you're describing, I don't think I can play on a guitar in quite the way you're playing on your touch instrument.
Mark, I mean, take a couple lessons with me. I'll show you. It's not okay. It's not about. It can be done with any musical instrument. The idea really is that you never practice music. Yeah, all you practice is moving from one note to another on your instrument. So you never ever give it any musical value. So that means that you're training your body to like the metaphor I usually use is to dance. You allow you're learning to dance from point A to point B on the stage that is the fretboard, let's say. So obviously, yes, you're right. Maybe with two hands on the fretboard, that is kind of like a little easier or a little harder. Could also be a little harder than just using one hand. But in guitar practice, it should be about the physical aspect of going from A to B. And I don't mean the notes A and B, but it may any notes that and you want to learn to be able to do that gracefully, to do that quickly, so that your body is not in the way when the inspiration strikes. Yeah, so I mean, but obviously there's also, like I said, like the good ear. Yes, I mean I can turn on my analysis module, and I have learned to have a very good memory of what I already played. Right. So, for example, like something like a piece like or an album like Truce, which I think you know, right? In those improvisations, which are also like free and on my end, I remember a phrase that I played 10 minutes ago. I have developed this capability of and I think of it more as like how shall I say? Like sets of pitches. So for example, I know that in the first half of the piece, I used the G, the B flat, and the B like 3 times as often as D, an E, and an F, for example. Like this is kind of like how my mind works. So I kind of keep statistics or stochastics, of what I have played, and so I can always kind of go back to something like that. But since I have the awareness of what I already played, I can also then decide not to do anything like it. So just becoming aware of the things you do has like these two effects. You can learn to repeat yourself, and you can also do things where you can also kind of consciously say, I don't want to repeat myself. Yeah. So and this has been a very, very long process. So, but I have to say that, like with the teaching I'm doing, I think I found some really good methods to teach people these techniques, and I had to look for all these techniques. I had to develop them. Not saying that they're unique to me, but I found these ways. And they made me the musician who I am. But nowadays I can pass on this information pretty easily to other people who then only need to work, and they will also get to a similar place.
Yeah, sounds interesting. I may take you up on that.
Yes, you're welcome.
As a follow-up to what you just said, Markus, do you find that the skill set you described and the organic nature in which you play and as an improv, and you said techniques, so do you feel like you came up with the techniques to allow you to do that, or are you trying to take what you have found you're able to do and translate that into a technique that you could then teach to someone? And I also wonder how well that translates to a person whose mind might not work the same way as yours when it comes to their view of music.
Yes, yeah. I think it's kind of like it's the former. It's just the like I just explained to Mark. It's the idea that I don't really want to play music, and I don't practice to play music. Music is something that I just assume that it's there, that it's always there. I don't know if that's maybe arrogant, but I just believe that music is creation itself, and so it's always there. It's always available. We only need to just kind of like do it. Yeah, we just need to do it, and you don't need any techniques to do that. Really, don't need techniques. For myself, it was just more because I maybe felt that I needed techniques, or that I thought that I wouldn't be good enough, or that I thought that maybe I should be as good as Keith Jarrett, right? Like, so there are all these comparisons and like these ideas. But I think that what I did, and what really obviously I have influences, like and Robert Fripp's teaching is like a really, really huge part of my influences, for example. And however, I have kind of like found ways to create sort of like new versions of, or also like new ideas, how to approach learning a musical instrument. For example, this really how shall I say, almost crazy idea to learn a musical instrument but to never play music. I had that idea from the very beginning, and in a way it was great that I had come across the Chapman stick, which was so impossible, like physically, and also like it was just too much. Okay, and somehow that inspired me to understand, like, first of all, before I even need to know what a C note, where a C is or an A is, I need to be able to play it. So and in a way that is kind of like the foundation of all of my music making. But I don't think it's necessary. I mean, I could nowadays. I'm pretty happy just pushing some random keys and creating sound, and that's kind of what I'm interested in. Really, playing an instrument was never my interest. And I literally, I'm saying this openly, I literally shat myself when I had to play in public as a teenager. Yeah. So for some reason, my love for music then also made me practice moving my fingers on a musical instrument. And then like one thing led to another, and I got very lucky that I met Gerhard, and we started making music together. And in the same year, '96, I joined a band called Europa String Choir, which was like two people that lived in England and one person from Rome, Italy. and it was really wonderful music that they made, and I was so in love with their music that I simply said, I need to be in this band, and I bought a ticket, and I flew to the UK, and I joined their band, like knowing all the parts of their songs. I knew I knew the viola parts, I knew both of the guitar parts, and because I just didn't know what will I play, but I was very determined. Once I fell in love with any one thing, I took it very seriously. Chuck, I don't know if that answers your question, but
Close enough. So, brief follow-up: since you have been writing music for a number of other instruments, have you picked those instruments up and started playing them at all? I don't know that I've ever seen you play anything else, but like the quartet, for example, you scored that, and did you just envision that and hear it in your head, or did you actually pick up any of those instruments to see how it sounded?
To be quite honest, I don't think that way about music. Music does not exist for something specific to play it. That's just not my approach. Like, if somebody says, okay, this piece is very unguitaristic, like I heard people say that, or this piece is very violinistic, or I've heard those things said to me many times, and all I think it means is like, oh, I can't play this. That's what it means. Like any great guitar player can play anything, right? Just because it's difficult or hard to play does not mean that it's unguitaristic. I've heard these things many times. So what does that mean, that to write something for guitar? Do I have to use like the standard shapes for G and a C chord? What does it mean, right? And there you go. Obviously, it's possible to write things that are impossible to play on a musical instrument. That's something I wouldn't do. And so that means that for the string players, I obviously did the basic math, like looking what are the ranges of the instruments and what kind of like sounds can we get and stuff like that. And I talked with a few players. It was especially important to find out which look for the score would inspire the players, and that those questions were more important than actually picking up a violin myself. I have picked up a violin myself in my life, so I didn't need to do that again in order to have a better idea what could be done. And also I see that it's not my responsibility yes, I need to think about the performance somehow, but it's not my responsibility to perform it. So kind of thinking too much about the instrument would make it kind of like not interesting for me. Okay, thanks, Chuck.
Thank you for doing these. They're always informative.
Yeah. Anybody still here who wants to ask a question?
Yeah, I had a question. When you have your show with the songs, you always show your computer, and there's this like a graphic equalizer or something that goes through the song. And what exactly is that? Is that an app or a machine, or can I get one? I just watching you watching the music, so to speak.
Yes. So I think what you're talking about is kind of like what's called a graphic analyzer, or
yes.
I'm pretty sure you can get standalone versions of these things. I don't use to be. I have them on my laptop, but you just need to Google it, and I'm sure you'll find something like it. And I'm sure there's free software that does that on your laptop, or if you wanted to use with your hi-fi system, I'm sure there's sort of like a display that you can put up which shows you the frequencies. I'm sure that's possible. Yeah, but I couldn't give you names or anything. I'm sorry, Peter. Yeah, but we can also maybe email about this. Maybe
Okay.
I can find something for you.
Yeah, I'm really interested because I like to see it.
Yes, Yes, you remember on the like in the 90s on the Windows computers, you had like these visualizations, and I'm pretty sure that still exists. And maybe some of you here can help Peter find software like that for his computer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Just we have 3 minutes left, but I just want to ask if you at some point experimented with visual art being created in the moment, like being connected to the improvisation or the music that's being created in the moment.
I have thought about that, and I think like maybe to an extent also tried that. However, I maybe I've mentioned that before to you, Jonas, but I don't really see images. I don't think in images. It's even hard for me to conjure up the face of my mother. It's crazy, I know, but I've read that it's something that some people have, and like my world is really dominated by feelings and by ideas, and yeah, and not even music, right? Music is also something that is almost just like a side effect of my way of conceptually thinking. And no, I enjoy visual arts, and again, like I said, my partner in Centerton, Bernhard, he's a professional graphic designer, but he always says that I'm the better designer. And I think what he means by that is maybe not something not so flattering, but he means that I'm less artistic inclined when it comes to visuals, but more practically inclined. And yeah, that's why I do, like when we work together on something, I do the typography, for example, because that's yeah.
And I see you posting on Instagram all these crazy pictures.
Yeah, that's something I just started recently, because like this is like my COVID project in a way, because like earlier this year when I returned from Japan, my girlfriend and I we started watching some TV shows at night, like one episode of something, and since I had worked all day most of the time, I was just not up to even like focusing anymore on something like that, and I started like a friend of mine, Diego Tejeda, who I was on the tour with Devin Townsend with. He recommended to me Google's photo editor, which is called Snapseed, I think, and I started using Snapseed, and like just from a white image, I started creating these artworks, and somehow I just started doing that. I don't think that they are particularly great, like from but it's like my hobby, and sometimes I create a few and occasionally post some on Instagram. Actually, I only post them on Instagram. And I posted one the other day, yesterday I think, which I really liked a lot, actually.
What
like
was
it,
the girl outline?
Yeah, it's a distorted face.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
Some might argue that it's your lack of formal training, in air quotes, that allows you to be freer with the art side, and maybe that's why your partner calls you the better designer. You're not restricted by any previous notions of this is how we do typography, this is the rules for leading and kerning and all that other stuff that you're just free to do, rather than having preconceived notions about the rules.
I think he means it the other way around, because I'm just so OCD that I want to kern, work on the kerning, even though he would say it's fine, right? I think it's that way around. Yeah. So, anybody else?
Where is
Yeah,
Tobias in the mix? Where
I
is
have
Tobias? Oh,
before we end, I have a special message for everybody.
Yeah, so I'll just answer Henry's question quickly.
Yeah, okay, go.
Everything we talked about so far was before Tobias's time.
Oh, great.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah.
AT and BT.
Yes. Okay, Leo, go for it.
Okay, I just received this in the mail today. It's a Ovari T-shirt,
Yeah.
and you can, before it was available on pre-sale, but officially from today it's available on sale.
Nice. Okay, I didn't know. Thank you. It looks great.
Yeah, I just received, and
Yeah.
actually, while we were talking, I was having fun printing, shipping label. I have to use my time like creatively, because I do so many things. And, cool, excellent.
Yeah, happy that I could help you make your labels.
Okay.
Yeah.
Recurring, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, everyone. Do you think this was kind of like a valid thing to do? Maybe
Oh,
at some
yeah.
point we can repeat it,
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
that was
and
great.
and like other people can ask questions. And let me just have a quick see if there. Okay, just thank yous here. Okay, so yeah, on Sunday at 6 p.m. my time. Leonardo, can you say something about this?
It's 6 p.m.
I think it's 6 p.m. my
Yeah, I
time.
think it's 6 p.m. Like
Yeah.
3 years ago, when we were at La Casa Murada in Spain, we recorded one absolutely amazing album, which is kind of, in my opinion, is going beyond any perception that anybody can have about improvisation. And Markus was involved. So my friend from Indonesia, Vicky Dermawan, who is pianist, but also on this album play occasionally Mini Moog, Fender Rhodes, and harmonium. And it's a double album, 155 minutes of crazy music. With Vicky Derman, Markus, Italian vocalist and sound, builder like Boris Savoldelli, and omnipresent Asaf Sirkis on drums. Asaf is everywhere. And we will be talking about this album, finally releasing after 3 years. There is always time to release certain things. And it's very interesting because this is a very, very special album. It was recorded under special circumstances, played under, it was simply, it cannot be described. But if you are, I will send a newsletter in a couple of days. And if you are free, it's on a Sunday. It's a little bit earlier because we have to catch a couple of guys in Indonesia and several people in Europe, in South America. Then I invite you to join because then all musicians, including Markus, we can talk about improvisation, because this is something very unique.
Yes.
And it's unique because Markus is there. Because I always said one thing, Markus is an exceptional musician. He always plays with exceptional musicians. But when we play with exceptional musicians, he makes those musicians even more exceptional. That's, and that's his thing, because I'm telling you, people like Asaf Sirkis and Mark Winfield, they're phenomenal musicians. But as soon as they started working with Markus, they went to another level. Same with this amazing Indonesian pianist Vicky Derman, who is absolutely amazing. And then he said, this guy is playing on world level for 35 years. He said he never ever played anything like this in his life because of Markus. Because of everything what Markus was saying today about improvisation, about freedom, about touchy feelings, about space, it was also applied on that album and much more. And everybody was acting in that same way. I invite you to on the Zoom. We'll have a special guest and see you there if you're.
Yes,
around.
I will. I will probably post a newsletter about this tomorrow, so everybody will receive an email.
Cool, excellent.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. I love you, and see you next time.
Yeah, hopefully
Okay.
on Sunday.
Okay, you're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
See you
everybody.
soon.
Yeah, bye-bye. Bye.